Smile, Pavan. We're both live together today. I didn't go on first, just so you know, Pavan. Just to let you know, we are live already. All right.
Yeah, as usual, we are late because Ghar ki murgi is as usual the murgi.
Well, today it was your problem too, though.
No, no.
Yeah.
But, okay, ठीक है.
You were taking care of the kid.
Yeah, sure.
It's important. So we were playing parents today too, because we had to take Arohi to the park. Pavan took Arohi to the park, and then she had to have her meal, and then she has a class, and her teacher called, and we had to talk to her teacher. So yeah, there was a lot of things that are happening. Hi everybody, you're listening to or you're watching Karki Murgida Forever and TCCN, and this is Pavan Elapavuluri right here. And today's topic that we announced earlier today is we were going to talk about Aryan invasion versus Aryan migration. What is this concept of Aryan invasion really? Like, what is this concept that we keep hearing of? So let me give a brief introduction. So I'm going to mute Pavan's mic and I'm going to throw him to the side because I need to do this introduction by myself. All right. So I grew up in a North Indian Punjabi household. And of course, I was exposed to a lot of rhetoric around being from the Aryan race, not just in my house. Like, this is what I've heard in the community. It's the North Indian rhetoric that you hear in India quite often, that we are of the Aryan race, and people in the South India are the Dravidians. They're the and it's not ever said out loud, but there is this connotation that for some reason that that we are a superior race. Aryans are a superior race. And whereas Dravidian are supposedly, they don't look, they're darker, which is looked on as a negative trait. So all of that really goes back to imperialism around the time when British were ruling India, and how this concept of superior race was brought in, and it played into their narrative of a superior race coming from the Europe to civilize rest of the world. So that was the concept of imperialism, and that has gone forward from generation to generation to generation. But how true is that? Does that hold any water? That's a conversation me and Pavan often have in our house. And I wanted to talk to him here. And I wanted to I encourage you to ask questions as well. If you have any questions, please engage in a conversation. Let's talk about this. Did you, in your houses, did you ever hear this Aryan Dravidian concept, or did you not? So talk to us about it. Leave comments in the comment section. And it is going to be, yes, Anusha, it is going to be a very tough topic, and it is going to be difficult to navigate in a way that it doesn't offend anyone. That's not the goal here. So we will try to talk and keep it as much as we can to science, and the rest of the things, if it's not factual, then it's just opinions, and that's all there is. So let's be very, very clear on that. All right. I'm going to bring you back in, homie. Yo, I need to play that. We need to let Ali play that ideas on point thing. Go ahead, Ali, play it. That's Ali's moment to shine. There you go. Hi, Pavan. Ali's like, you didn't let me do my thing. Hi. All right. So you're unmuted now.
So who is going to get offended here? Are Aryans are going to get offended, or Dravidians are going to get offended in this thing? Who do you think would get offended here?
I think the racists might get uncomfortable.
How? So Aryans will not get offended because Aryans were the victors, and Dravidians, how will Dravidians get offended because they were the victims? So how would that be? I don't know.
See, whenever we talk about race, whether it's whenever you read any book on anthropology or archaeology, for that matter, DNA studies and et cetera, anything that comes out, all the studies that come out, the first conversation is like how it makes people uncomfortable because of a certain view that we've held of race all these years. and all of a sudden that's taken away from us, and we're told that we're all a mixture of multiple races all over the world. We're a result of migration of people through centuries, and then we're a result of all these gene pools mixing. And
So,
perhaps
if I make Aryans look bad, would you be offended? Because do you consider yourself to be an Aryan?
well, definitely not after reading everything that I've read. So
Well,
perhaps like when I was growing up, of course, that's the thing that's stuck in your head, right? Like we're this uh, European people or people from Central Asia. They came into India. There was a mass invasion, and then all of a sudden, like they intermarried into the locals there, and we're the children of those people. And who are indigenous Indians, they were all pushed down south. So
so when did you first hear the word Aryan? Do you remember? Do you remember
I don't.
anything?
I
For
don't.
me, the first Aryan was in Doordarshan in Mahabharata. Like the wives used to address their husbands as Aryan.
Yeah. And we
Yeah,
begin, yes, Manpreet.
uh, Aryan, and then they would call their husbands Aryan. Like
Yeah, I
Sunoji is
remember
like
that.
Aryan. It's like what is this? What is this Aryan? Then that's my first foray into this whole idea is Aryan. So yeah, and in Telugu too there is a word called Ayya. Ayya is a very respectful word of saying sir, and then that's a colloquialization of word Arya. So like even in Telugu there is a word called Ayya, which is when you say some Ayagaru, when some you talk to a respect Sarji. Sarji like so sir is a Arya is a sir in a Telugu too. So that matches in the sense that your wife is calling respectfully her husband sir. So that's there too. So Arya has been used as a respect as a term of respect. So there has been that. So there is some credence to this idea of Aryans being as the colonizers or as the kings, or uh, there has been this whole idea of Aryans being a colonizers, and there has been so much history. There has been so much literature where this whole idea of Aryans are the colonizers have come into India, and then they colonized over this, but and but that's all in our mythology. We have been hearing in Ramayana, we have been hearing in Mahabharata, as I just said, like Aryans are the superior race and they have colonized India. But how much is it true? Is there a scientific validation behind this whole idea? What does the science say? uh, that's the crux of the point. So we have been growing up with this whole idea about Aryans are the ones who came and colonized us. So that's that's
Yeah.
that's
So
that's where we have to see if we can peel the layers out of that.
yeah, like Mans Abarwal also says, this whole Aryan theory basically means that we're taught year after year is that Aryans came, pushed local people down south, and that makes local people who are in the south of India as the local indigenous Indians. And
Yeah, but
I hear that so much from our parents' generation, even now. Like people like my dad, his friends, I'd hear that so many times. Oh, you married a South Indian. You married an actual Indian. And I'm like, what are you then?
I agree with Dr. Hall. Is that it's a linguistic thing. It's not a racial. So the racial connotations disappeared quite long time ago. Well, let me bust that myth of that whole South Indian and North Indian Dravidian thing. So Dravidians and no one really pushed Dravidians down at all. That's let's throw that out of the window first. There is no such thing of there was no big battle of Aryans and Dravidians happening at on the plains of Ganga, and then they pushed them down and they went below Vindhyas. That didn't happen. There is no such record of that at all. So that myth is gone. Dravidians were not defeated, and Aryans are not the winners. There was no such battle. So that's gone. So But
And what evidence do you have for that?
Oh, okay. There is a lot of that. That's what we can talk about. But there was so first. There are so it's like an elephant and blind man, right? So everyone started coming and looking at it and trying to understand what's happened. Indian study of population, it's very, very complicated. And if a genetist would come and see it, it's so much mixed up, they don't understand. A lot of genetists gave up. And there was no, the archaeologists, they would see many different cultures, so they would think that there are many racial types here, there are many civilizations happening. They didn't understand. So linguists came, and linguists, there were many different languages. There was a Chinese, Indo-Chinese, Indo-Burmese language. There was an Indo-European language. There was a Southeast Asian language. There was so much mixed up. So this needs to be an it has to be a very, very collaborative research, and people have been doing a collaborative research. So this is what in the research, after peeling through many layers, let me come to the climax and say that this is what happened. So there was many waves of migration. So the first wave of, as we talked about, the first wave came around 50,000 years ago. The long time ago, there were Neolithic Stone Age people. They are the beachcomber generation. They went and populated India. And then there was multiple waves of people coming in mainly from the northwest corridor. That's from Central Asia. They were coming down into India. So there were uh, the main they call the golden crescent. The most fertile crescent is around Iraq, in that area, Mesopotamia. That those people came into India, several waves. So the main idea is Dravidians were one of the first waves who came. They came around 9,000, 10,000 years ago.
So
And then
how do you define Dravidian? What does the word Dravidian mean? Like,
so
what is the
Dravidian,
origin?
okay, let's leave that to the bit later. We will peel into that, but let me put to that whole story so that people can understand. So
Okay, I'll
and then
write my
around,
questions.
yeah, so around that period, the Dravidians were, let's keep a placeholder for Dravidians. Dravidians were the first migration people who came in, and then they settled in India. They settled all over. And then around what we so there is some archaeological evidence for that, but major archaeological evidence is for Indus Valley civilization. That's the big. So if you read the history of India starts, our 10th class or school book, history of India starts from Indus Valley civilization. That's where there is lot of history, lot of archaeological evidence. So this civilization is around 4,000 or 5,000 to 4,000 years, around that age. And then suddenly around 3,000 years ago, the civilization dies. And then the big influx of this new group of people come up. The big marker in archaeology is horses and spoke wheels. These are the two big archaeological evidence. That's when they say that, oh, these Aryans came in these chariots, riding, shooting arrows at Indus Valley civilization and killing them. And these Aryans came and spread all over the North India. They followed the big rivers of both Indus and Ganges and Ganga and Yamuna, and then they settled down there. So that's the major historical or demography of India, like older population study of India. So there was so that's where the invasion theory comes in. So that's where this whole and
Okay, so basically what you're saying is that that's you just described the invasion theory.
Mhm.
But what actually happened?
Actually invasion, so the invasion is not, so there is no real evidence, there is no real archaeological evidence that Aryans came and exterminated or defeated. If anything, if there is any credence or anything, there must have been a fight or a big war between Indus Valley civilization people and Aryans, but there is no such evidence at all. but there is no such evidence. There is no. So but what we know is Rigveda. The Rigveda is the first written text of Aryans. It's around 3,000 years old, which matches very closely to the last known evidence of Indus Valley civilization. So the Aryans coming in Indus Valley civilization getting wiped out from history is very coincidental. So that's when that's where this whole idea comes in. Is but so the Aryans did come through. They had horses. There is lot of evidence. There is lot of problem is chariots. So in Rigveda, there is a word called chariot, and then chariot, they came in chariots, and then in for Aryans, Indra was their god, and then they say that Indra rode through chariots and lobbed lightning bolts at these local Indians. They were called Dasu, DASU.
Okay, no, I understand. I think where we're still lacking clarity is the point here that invasion is something that came up. The colonizers, the British, like I mentioned earlier, they came up with this theory to create this whole invasion idea of invasion.
Yeah.
So I need you to be very clear on the difference between the invasion and then the migrations. And of course, I want to bring this onto the screen as well before you go and before you talk about it. So Professor Holley says there are 4 all highly problematic theories about the Aryan-Harappan relationship. 1, Aryans invaded India from Central Asia into Europe, killed or pushed them to the south, pushed Dravidians to the south. That's the first theory that we're talking about, which is highly problematic. Aryans, Vedic people, migrated into India in a series of waves over several centuries. Aryan Vedic people originated in India alongside Harappans, and Aryan Vedic people lived in the Indus Valley, which is the Aryan Vedic Harappan Valley. And before you go on, I want to mention another thing. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off every time. The more I read about it, the more I read about it, I see that it has been politicized quite a bit. So there is that distinct extreme positions that people are taking. So today, when you are speaking, you are talking from a very scientific point of view, and you're telling us exactly what science says.
I don't care about if I offend Aryans or Dravidians.
No, it's not about offense. I really want to know science. Or if I wanted,
that's what I'm trying to say. Okay.
If I wanted someone to just talk random stuff about one extreme, no, this is like I have the Hindutva agenda. I'll find someone like that. So if I'm talking to you, I expect science. So go at it.
So okay. So there are so many things mixed up here. Invasion theory. I wanted to come to invasion theory through science. So the invasion theory is I believe in the invasion theory. Why? This is because of genetics. So there has been a huge study of genetics, and I will get the book's name. So this is the major book is the major reference is David Reich's who we are and how we got here. So there is a chapter 6. He talks about how much, what are the crux of the science of it. So here is the big thing, the reason why I believe it's an invasion. So they tried to find out an ancient DNA, like a DNA from a sample from 3,000-year-old. They couldn't find a sample. So what they did was they took 2 approaches. One is a Y haplogroup. Y is a chromosome which comes from the father's side. A haplogroup is some sort of genes which kind of relate to a group of people. So the Y haplogroup is the one from a father, and so most of the Indians, 30 to 40% of Indians, share a Y haplogroup, which is Indo-European group. So it comes from Central Asia. That's the haplogroup which most of the Indians share from, and North Indians have a higher percentage of this haplogroup, and South Indians have a lower percentage of this haplogroup. So and this is the crux of this. And then they did a mitochondria DNA, which is mainly comes from the mother side, and most of the Indians have a higher percentage of mothers. Most of the Indians share a very similar mothers group. So the thing is, so the mothers of the ancient Indians were indigenous, and the fathers were from outside India. So let me give you a very simple example. If you want to emigrate to a country, would only men emigrate, or would they emigrate with their families? If you are invading a country, would you invade a country with women and children, or just young men? What would you
Just
do?
men. Just
Yeah.
men.
So this is the genetics is the key here. So there was a big invasion of men, and most of Indians share a father. So they and then they trace this group to the farmers in Anatolia. That's like Turkey, Greece area. They said that there was one guy who is ancestor for almost everyone in the world, like big huge population. So the genetics say that we, like Indians, the Aryans, where it was an invasion theory. So and if you flip on it, it's that out of India theory, OIT. So the people flip on that and say that, oh, the language matches, the genes match. So Indians were the ones who went and occupied all the Europe, and that's where all these, because the genetics match, the language matches. So then there is, okay, we talked about the cult, we talked about genes, we talked about archaeological evidence, and the third piece of evidence is the language, Sanskrit. Sanskrit, and it matches with Zendavasti in Iran, and then it matches with Lithuania. There were these ancient languages. You can trace these languages, and so Indo-Germanic languages have a very strong roots. So yesterday you were talking to a German kid, and he said that the word for a name is Nam in German. So it's very similar. There are so many similarities. So the Aryan languages, which is based on Sanskrit, like Prakrit was the original language, and which has been uh, purified in India. It's called Sanskrit. So these languages was the mother of all these. There is no Hindi, but there was Prakriti, and then there was Punjabi. Punjabi is much older language, if
Okay.
anything.
No, we that's already assumed. Like we know that. We know that this mixing happened. What I'm trying to get at is, again, it comes to the same question. So you were saying there was an invasion because
Mhm,
only men came. So
mhm,
you're for the invasion theory.
mhm.
You're for the invasion theory. But you're saying that Dravidians were not pushed down though.
No, it was not. They didn't fight Dravidians at all. There were, if they would have met anyone, they would have met Harappan. They would have met the Harappan civilization, the Indus Valley civilization, and we don't. And the big point there, I wanted to address Dr. Hall is this thing is, there was no real determination of what sort of heritage this Harappan civilization is. So they think that it was some sort of a proto-Dravidian culture there. So I would like to talk a bit more. And everyone thinks that Dravidians are a very, very South Indian race. There is in Balochistan, it's in the northwestern Pakistan, no, southwestern Pakistan, on the border of Iran. There is a tribe called Brui, Bruhi, Brui tribe. They are a very, very strong Dravidian. They don't have they don't have the Y haplogroup of Aryan haplogroup which Indians have. They are a very, very Dravidian. They have a Dravidian. They're very Dravidian, and their language in old Telugu is a word for a small girl is kuna. Their word for a small girl is kuna. So there is even, in a Dravidian, there is a Dravidian tribe in Balochistan.
So
So
that doesn't actually disprove that Dravidians moved down south or they were pushed down south, right? That doesn't. It just means maybe a tribe
they
was
were
left behind.
most, like, there was no pushing down. There was in fact
How do you prove that?
the genes tell you that there was a huge amount of intermixing there in the North Indian plain. So the Vindhya mountains somehow formed a barrier, because there is a reason for that too. The Vindhya mountains formed a barrier. It's mostly a climatic barrier, but there was a huge intermixing of the new peoples coming in from Central Asia and steppe, and then intermingling with the local population. For lack of better words, we could call them Dravidian people.
So
There was
how would you? So would you call it migrations or would you call it
What would you
invasions? I
call
like this
Mughal? What
question.
would you call Mughals in India?
I think that would be invasion. Of
Yeah,
course, they
that's
came.
exactly what it is.
Mhm.
So they came, they invaded, but then after Akbar, after Babur, they lived here, they married women here, they established families here, they became very, very Indic. They became Indian kings. The Mughals were Indian kings. But was it and then they lived here, they ruled here, and so, and then they established their families here and everything. What do you call that? Is it a migration or an invasion? It's exactly that.
Hmm.
But Europeans, they went back. They never settled in India.
So that's I've been reading about that too. So there was a lot of that circular movement. So people came, people left. So there was a lot of migration happening both ways.
Yeah.
It's
So the
not.
latest, yeah. So there it is. So it is an invasion, but invasion in a sense that, but it was, they established their societies. They established the whole Vedic culture. They established the whole Vedic culture, the culture of Vedas. And why didn't they go south? They, because of wheat, and wheat needed temperate climate, and Vindhyas are a climatic barrier. So they used the temperate climates, the winters of North India, which is very temperate, and it matches the steppe climate in steppe, and then they use that. That's the reason. So wheat started cultivating around 9,000 years ago, and so these were the wheat cultivators of steppe. So they were the herders and wheat cultivators. So it's the wheat which Vindhyas are the climatic barrier between North and South India, and then they stayed there in the plains of Punjab, plains of Indo-Gangetic plain, and cultivated wheat there. That's the
So
reason.
describe the Indian subcontinent to me before these Aryan invasions began to happen. This is around the time when Indus Valley was declining. So this
Mhm.
Dravidian people that we speak of, were they in the Indus Valley civilization as well, and they were living
Yeah,
in the south of
yeah.
India?
So
And were they all over India at that time? Is that what it is?
yeah, so they were all over India at that time. Yes. So there was, that's what. So there was Indus Valley. We don't have any civilization. So that's very really strange. Is we have a big civilization in around Indus, but there was no huge civilization found in around Ganga. There is no Ganga Valley
Yeah. So
civilization.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
So
I wanted
that's
to know about that too. So why is it that all the civilizations that we
no,
talk about, even Mohenjo-daro and Harappa,
everything is Indus Valley. So we really don't know. The climatic conditions during that time may not be very favorable. In that time, we really don't know. There was, but Indus was very, very fertile around that whole northwestern part of Indian subcontinent. So that was the civilization there. And maybe Dravidians didn't really know how to cultivate wheat, and they tried to cultivate rice there, which may worked, which may not work, but it was not really fertile. We really don't know what happened. Uh,
so
and
coming back to
coming
my
down,
original question, what does Dravidian even mean?
yeah. So there is this idea. So Dravidians have, if you can, it's the rice cultivating people. So the rice cultivation, as we talked about, originated in southern China and northeast India. So and these are the people who migrated, who came along the east coast of India, chasing the monsoons and equatorial climate, and heavy monsoons, and to cultivate rice in the low lying areas of eastern India, eastern and southern India. So these were the Dravidians, and so there is a genetic marker for that too. So there is a tribe called Jarvas in North Sentinel Island in Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So these are the Stone Age people. There are still few hundred people left in this island. That they live in Stone Age. So they have spears with stones on tied around, and by law, Indian law, you can't really have a contact with them. So that island is totally off limits. Not
Why?
no, because they want to preserve them, because they are the one of the very few Stone Age people there living in the world. There are some in Amazon, but this is very so. In 2004 tsunami, Indian government wanted to see what, and then try to help them. So they didn't really let helicopters land or anything. They threw spears at helicopters. They didn't want any help. So they found a DNA from them. So I don't know, they must have gotten somehow, I don't know, DNA for them, and then that DNA is not present in a majority in the. So there is ancient North Indian groups and ancient South Indian groups. So that DNA is present in the ancient South Indian groups. So these are the people who really worked on. So there is a theory that there was a volcanic eruption in Sumatra, and that people migrated into South India, escaping the climate catastrophe in Sumatra around 9,000 or 10,000 years ago, and then they
Where
came
is Sumatra?
in
Southeast,
Indonesia.
Southeast
Yeah,
Asia.
yeah, yeah. So that they came from Southeast Asia. So this is so if you think about it, it's like the cliche, right? North Indian wheat eating people, South Indian rice eating people. That's exactly what it is. So and then the languages too. So the Dravidian languages have no relation to Indo. They are two total different families. There are no
Mhm.
roots at all. There is nothing. There is no grammar doesn't match. Nothing matches. So at Vindhyas, they break apart, and then they say that this is South. So there are two exceptions to this: Telugu and Malayalam. Telugu and Malayalam have a very lot of Sanskrit influence in Telugu and Malayalam. That's because of later migrations of Brahmins from Gangetic Plain into Kerala, and because they were ruled by Hindu kings and who really wanted to propagate Hinduism, that's where they got. But Tamil literature, Sangam literature, is one of the oldest, as old as Vedas. So Tamil script is one of the oldest scripts. So if you say that uh, Dravidians were savages, that's not true. Tamilian Sangam literature, Tamilians were writing and
That's never said that they were savages.
no,
It's just
but
said
that
that they're
no, but
weaker.
Aryans said that. Aryans said that in Vedas. They said that these were savages. They didn't know how to live. And then we vanquished them. This is a very colonial way of.
Mhm.
And in Rig Veda, they said
It's
that.
a civilization. White
Yeah,
man
it is
comes
a
and
color.
civilizes you.
It's a colonial power. So and that's how they, and then that's how they propagated their religion, Vedic, the way, and then slowly. And if you go back to even Tamilian culture, it's a very very nature worshipping culture. There is a goddess for, and then these gods and goddesses who are very animalistic gods and goddesses who are incorporated into Hinduism at a later stage. But there was this whole uh, India was always like almost every culture is a very animalistic and nature worshipping culture. And India, like this Aryans, when they come with Vedas and everything, they were also fire worshipping people, and then that got
So where?
incorporated.
We talked about Dravidians, and where did Aryans come from?
So Aryans came from, there is so they come from that, what's that area called? I forgot. It's like around southern Russia. So if you think about it, around Ukraine, Belarus, during that area, that's where the southern Russian steppe. That's where they come from. That's where they. So if you look about it, so the big all of this gene pool starts in around in Iran. There was this Iranian uh, there was, yes, Ural Sea, around that area. So now it's a desert there. But so all this gene pool gets concentrated into area like Iran is the real where all these people, all these gene pools congregate to. So there, so around 9,000 or 10,000 years ago, there was a big explosion of not explosion, big emigration of people from Iran, and they went all over the world. There is one very very cool fact. So Indian genome doesn't match Chinese genome. We are much closer to the Indo-European people, not to the Chinese people. Himalayas were a huge barrier.
Mhm.
The civilizations really really got separated. So these geographical barriers like mountains are a huge barrier. Like like ancient humans could navigate seas, but they couldn't navigate mountains for somehow. So that was really cool. So they went to steppe, and then the people from steppe started migrating back to iran, and then they started chasing the grasslands, and then came chasing the wheat growing fields and came back to india. So there were multiple generations of these iranian farmers. So we are all related to, either even if you're a dravidian or if you're an aryan, you are related to these ancient iranian farmers. One migrated around 9,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago, and one batch migrated around 3,000 years ago. And if you go back around 40 to 50,000 years ago, we are all related to nine group of humanoids who were walking around in Ethiopia and who were not finding anything to eat, and who were trying to eat snails on beaches. So
I like what Anusha said. So, to simply put, my genetic ancestors were invaded by her husband's ancestors. Then I intermixed with her husband this century. And yeah, it all makes
yeah,
sense now.
you are reliving 9,000 years old history in few decades.
So, you are currently in this century a South Indian, and I am North Indian. So, if our DNA was to be analyzed, what would they find?
I am very, very close to a North Indian DNA. So because here I reveal because I'm a Brahmin, and my lineage goes back to the scholars who came from Indo-Ganges, from Benares or from around that area, the regions of learning around that area, and migrated south to propagate Hinduism or to serve in the courts of kings, mostly serve in the courts of kings as ministers, so as administrators. So my family till last few generations ago worked as administrators for zamindars or administrators for kings. So 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 i and and, and in india, one thing is very, very cool, everyone agrees to that, is because of the very rigorous marriage selection. So you only marry within your jati, you went within your.
That's very recent too. That's very
No, it's
recent too.
so they say that, so if you so the one group they identified in south india are the brahmins, who have a starkly different genetic code than other people in south india, because as I said, this is, so if they match our genetic code, we would be much similar to your annoyance, but that's what.
Yeah, no. Why do I care?
Because this whole idea of I married a dravidian.
Never said that. I never said that. So the difference between your DNA and someone from South India who is not a Brahmin, their
Mhm.
DNA would probably be as maybe more than your and my DNA,
Yeah,
is what
and
you're
and
trying to
the
say.
only thing what we are missing is the Jarwa group DNA. So that's the Australasian DNA, which the South Indians have, that group of people who brought south rice from around 9,000 years ago, whose DNA matches this tribe's DNA. So that's the DNA what is lacking in the north, but we
So
lack the same.
when your family moved down, they probably came with the wives and children and the entire
Could
families
be,
moved
but
down. Yeah.
even if it is only men who came in, the thing is, this DNA is passed through. We are talking about Y haplogroup.
Hmm.
We are not talking about mother's mitochondrial DNA. So there would be a lot of intermarrying, but it's like I carry a Y haplogroup of Indo-Europeans.
Let's get tested.
Yeah, there is no question. I'm sure my ancestors were very, very particular who they married.
let's let's get tested and find out. Well, the Jat tribes, my ancestors, I mean, they
Mhm.
came from what, Mongolia as well, isn't it?
Yeah, so they are mainly herders. I'm sorry. They're mainly herders. So they came from it. maybe there may be a later migration of it's mainly herders, so it's a very later Central Asian migration of Jat tribes. It's not in an Aryan migration, but is a much later migration.
Mm-hmm. So this idea of Aryans being, again, like this tall, light-skinned, blue-eyed, gorgeous people, and everyone strives to be an Aryan, and the idea and the name Aryan has so much pride in it too. People want to name their children Aryan. And Shah Rukh Khan, his son's name is Aryan. So the name associated, and I don't know if anyone would name their kid Dravidian.
Yeah,
You know
Rahul
what I mean?
Dravid.
Well, you know what I mean. That's your last name, but you're born with. But it's just that the popular culture has been so, and it's probably like I mentioned earlier, it came from the British. This idea of creating these super races, the idea of these
Yeah,
martial
you
races.
are missing the Germans. Nazis had a huge
Yes,
amount of
yes.
interest in India. Like Nazis studied Germans. Well, I should not say Nazis, but Germans also studied uh, Indology. The first Indologists were Germans. They were very much interested in this whole idea of Aryans. So the Nazi idea of Aryans like a pure race, and then they wanted to find these Aryans. They thought that the Europe got mixed up with all of impurities, quote unquote. So they thought that the real Aryans were in India. So they wanted to study this pure race and see what it is. So they lot of good work in Indology, like Sanskrit. The first in Sanskrit a European to study Sanskrit was a German, Max Muller, and they did a lot of work on it. But then that's the thing, they wanted to come out with this whole idea of a pure race who came, who was who really conquered the whole world, who from almost on the western edges of North Sea to almost to the Indian Ocean. They conquered everyone, so they really wanted to emulate themselves with that whole idea. So there is a lot of racial connotations here,
Mm-hmm.
a pure race
Absolutely. The
connotations.
pure race, this race of, and even until now, like I find it very intriguing. So I'm glad that we're starting to question these notions. I'm glad that in our family, at least, like whenever these conversations happen, I always have things to say that,
But you
this
are
is
not
not
pure.
normal.
It's like whoever is saying that I'm a pure Aryan, you are not a pure Aryan at all. You have maximum, if you say 20 to 30% of it. So other
Yeah.
70%
I don't
is
know. I mean,
is an Indian.
this concept of pure race, I don't think it applies to anyone anywhere. We're all a mix of
No,
something
no,
somewhere, right? Like
no.
we're all a mix of gene pools, like
The
regardless of who
only
it is.
pure race, the only pure race right now is the Jarwas in North Sentinel Island in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and do see where they are. They are still in Stone Age.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Exactly. So evolution over the years, you get good and positive from
Mm.
different cultures. It's like creating art, right?
It's
Like you get,
Darwinism, right? It's
yeah,
Darwinism. Everything you try to
selection.
you try to imbibe all the good ideas from where you belong. So and I would be very honest. Like people right now in India, it's like the right wing in India always try to bring down the Mughal time. I don't think so. Mughals had a very huge contribution to India. So they really elevated the music. They really elevated the art. They brought cuisine, and then they increase the cuisine, like the culture of eating, the culture, architecture, everything. So there are good aspects to it. India would not be India
Yeah.
if not for Mughals.
If
British,
not for
I'm really ambivalent. Like I don't really know what maybe a few
trains.
centuries down the line, maybe people will be like, oh, British.
Well,
If anything,
they gave you tea and they gave you
and railways.
trains. They
Yeah.
gave you
So
trains. They gave the
two things
entire
which I
railway
like,
network.
two things which I like, they gave us. So that maybe there I'm okay. But so I'm a bit ambivalent. But Mughals, I don't have any ill feelings. They were conquerors. So but at least they stayed here, and then they tried to integrate into our culture, and then they increase the cultural variation. So that way I'm okay. I would not wipe out Mughals in Indian history. You can't really wipe out, but I don't see
Yeah.
it as a very negative influence at all. That So in the same way, if you are okay with Mughals, you should be okay with Aryans, and if you are okay with Aryans, you should be okay with Mughals. I don't see them as very different. It's just that Mughals were 500, 600 years ago, and Aryans were 3,000, 4,000 years ago. It's a scale of where you are at.
And what's really interesting is India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, their official languages are the Indo-Aryan languages. All
No,
four of
not
them.
Sinhalese.
I read that Sinhalese is too, that it's
No,
Indo-Aryan.
Sinhalese is. I would
We'll
be
have
very
to
strongly. I would very
research that.
strongly
Yeah.
suspect that. Let's
No,
see.
I was actually quite intrigued with that when I read that somewhere, that it is actually all four of them are Indo-Aryan languages, Sinhalese included. I thought that was very interesting. So,
Oh, it's an Indo-Aryan language. Sinhalese.
see?
Okay, maybe because of the Buddhist influence. I didn't know that. That's something I learned today. I thought it was
You should
very.
talk to me more often. I'm full of knowledge. I'm full of all these information that you don't think I have, but I do have it.
Very good. Thank you.
Are you impressed?
Yeah, very impressed. I impressed my Wikipedia.
But yeah, so it was very intriguing to me. I thought that was so cool. So all four, the Indian subcontinent countries, like our official languages are Indo-Aryan.
India, not India though. India has 22 official languages.
Yeah, well, you know what I mean. Like
No.
largely. Okay, fine. I'm sorry. I offended your Telugu-ness.
Dravidianness.
Dravidianness. Did we cover? I think we covered everything. So the sum of the entire conversation is that Aryans are not superior to Dravidians. Technically, no race is superior to any other race. We are a product of a lot of cultures mixing over centuries, over years and years and years of civilizations. People came to Indian subcontinent. People left Indian subcontinent. People went. People were moving all over the world, and not US yet.
And
Maybe there was migration to US too from Alaska.
So okay, that's a totally. But
that's a totally different topic.
Roma people were the tribes from Rajasthan and Gujarat.
Yes.
In India we used to call Banjaras. They left India around 400 or 500 years ago. Land migrated.
Yeah.
To Europe. So they are called gypsies in Europe, and they are looked down upon. So they are very Indic people. They still do bhajans for Hindu, but their language is so mixed up, but they still worship Indian gods, Hindu gods.
Yeah, no, it's very intriguing. And once you start reading up on this, there's so many people all over the world. And
I want to address Dr. Hawley's question. Can you put that there?
Yeah, I can put that there.
Yeah, so that's a very, very good question. I wanted to talk about it, but then it missed. I think genetically they are a proto-Dravidian people. So they were one of the first. These Adivasis, Gonds, these are the first first indigenous, like even before the 9,000, these people were the Neolithic people. So Gonds and in Gonds are the one of, like, that's where the Gondwana land came from. Gondwana land was the proto-continent, which Indian subcontinent and Africa came, Antarctica came. Gonds are the Adivasis. So they are the proto-Dravidian people. They were, in fact, if anyone says that they are the first indigenous people, like all the Adivasis. So Adi, if you break that word, Vasi is a citizen, like who lives in a land. Adi is the beginning. People who have been living from the beginning are Adivasis. So Adivasis, if anyone says that they are the First Nation people of India, and Adivasis, they're still. I don't know about. There are. I have met. There is a tribe of people in Andhra Pradesh. They're very African-looking people. So these, I think they are one of the first oldest Neolithic people, Neolithic migrations who came from Africa, who I keep talking about, around 30 or 40,000 years ago, who settled in India. And I want to add a little tidbit of information here. one of the oldest remains of humans found is in Sri Lanka, around 50,000 years old. So these Adivasis are the First Nation people. Exactly, this is what Adivasi means, a First Nation people. That I'm not really sure. I keep hearing I would rather say it's a pre-Dravidian people. I should have said pre-Dravidian people. I should not have
so
said.
What is proto-Dravidian people?
Proto-Dravidian means a first Dravidian. So they are pre-Dravidian. So they are Adivasis. So I thank you for correcting me.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that question as well earlier, like for people who don't know what proto-Dravidian means. All right. Thank you so much. I think we covered everything, and we have reached to a conclusion that you are almost as Aryan as I am. And
I didn't disappoint your Aryan family. They should have gotten my genome tested.
I think we do need to get you tested regardless. Yeah. And we need to. Okay, so Shalinder, you need to watch this entire show from the beginning. This is the myths that we busted. What we learned in our school days, we have to unlearn that, because what we were taught is that when Aryans invaded India, they forced.
Should we start this show again?
Yeah, we'll have to start from the beginning. So this entire show, once we've ended, you can go back and listen to it. So we tried to. In fact, bust that myth, because that's not what happened. We were taught that. All of us were taught that. And we assumed that we're the Aryans, and we were taught that we were a better race, all of that. And it's really, really, really problematic. And we need to start questioning these, I don't even know what to call them, like these racist assumptions. So basically what we said in the entire show is that we talked about today is that theory did not happen. That's not what happened, that Dravidians didn't really flee to South India. There was a lot of intermixing that happened. There were people in the South India already who were there for... So
the real Indians, if anything, are the Adivasis.
Are the Adivasis, yeah. Yeah. So again, just to clarify this, so where did Dravidians come from? So there's Adivasis living in India.
No, so there is no real answer where Dravidians came from. So the only answer what we have is that there is a genetic relationship between these proto-Australasians there is a genetic similarity between the Jarvas and the Aboriginal people in Australia. So we think that scientists think that this is a migration from Southeast Asia. So that's the migration. So Dravidians came from Southeast Asia, and there are also Dravidians who may have come from the Iran. So they before 3,000 years, around 9,000, 10,000 years ago, there has been another churning happened in India, where the
what was that sound effect for?
The churning of a mixture. So populations mixed up. So there was
live edits.
So there is a mixture of populations from Iranian farmers, and also the rice like monsoon chasing people from Southeast Asia, and then they mixed up in the Indian subcontinent. That happened around 9,000 years ago. So there is no real answer who is a real Indian. So there is no real answer. So if you call the First Nation people in Canada the first Canadians, you should call Adivasis as the first Indians.
Yeah. So none of us are real pure race. All right. I think we're done. It was lovely chatting with you. We'll chat with you later again next week. Another topic. Thank you so much, Anusha. Thank you so much, Shalinder. And Anusha had a really nice comment up there where she said, "Roop, you've got fire."
The Aryan. Okay.
The Aryan fire.
that's because Aryans worship fire. That's why we do Homa. Homa is a very Aryan thing, and that comes
we can
from...
talk about it all night. We can talk about it all night, and then yes, Professor Holly also said that this has been politicized. That political Mansa Barwal, so much politicized that political parties in southern India have their names derived from it.
Dravida Munneta
Absolutely.
Kalagam. Dravida Munneta Kalagam. It's so Tamil people own this idea of Dravid. So it's like they took this idea, like they owning the blacks owning the N word. They owned this Dravid word, and they're very, very proud of it. So there it is.
And Professor Hawley, you're so right, Roop.
And I want to say the last word. The Hindu nationalists really don't like this idea of Aryan invasion. They want to say that, they want to say that we are the ones who went out and invaded Europe. So, but science doesn't really accept that.
Yeah, science doesn't accept Aryan invasion. Sorry, it doesn't accept that Dravidians were pushed to the south, and it doesn't accept that Aryan invasion did not happen. So it doesn't accept either extreme. So there's something in the middle, and we all mixed up, and we're all see, when you mix cultures, beauty happens. So something more beautiful, something more evolved is created out of it, and that's what we are. Gorgeous, beautiful people, all of us. All right, that was lovely. Thank you so much. Have a good night. We'll talk soon. Everyone who hasn't watched it live and who's watching it not live, thank you for watching.
Someone should put a comment now that's saying that Dravidians were the original people. We should start again.
Shailender's asking, how come an engineer is talking about this? He's not an engineer. That's
why. I'm not an engineer, so I can talk about this.
Because he's not an engineer.
You answered it yourself.
That's it. That's the answer. He's not an engineer. He's a researcher. He's a scientist. So that's his job.
Talk about genetics.
Yes. Oh, I thought she was talking about the fire behind you. Ha ha, Aaron. Very funny. Your jokes are getting boring. You need to come to Calgary and get a crash course in humor again, bud. Love you too. All right. I think I caught all the comments. Perfect. Well, any comments that come in later, we'll answer them at a later time. Thank you so much for everyone who watched it with us. Thank you everyone who was watching without us, like not live. Really appreciate your support. Really appreciate your comments as well, because it adds to the conversation. It adds value to me. It adds, I'm sure Pavan would agree.
And I would like to thank Dr. Hawley to join us. And Dr. Hawley really raises the level of conversation. I really appreciate his time.
Even Anusha,
everyone. But Dr. Hawley, like he really pushes he really makes it really worthwhile for me to think about it.
The PhD in you gets really not intrigued. Like, what's the word I'm looking for here? Excited. I don't know. Motivated.
Okay, I have to wish goodbye too.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Aryan Maharani ko mera pranam.
I think I should get Dr. Hawley and you together one day. Oh, then Pavan won't have anything to say.
No. There is a saying you can't show a diya to the sun, right?
Yeah. Then the real doc will shine, and then Pavan will be like, oops, maybe I am an engineer.
Well, I'm not an engineer. So.
He's not an engineer, guys. He's not an engineer. All right. Bye-bye.